added.
Back when I graduated from high school, they all had 3 times as many students.
Good afternoon. My name is Allison McKenzie and I am the chair of the Historic Conservation Board. I would like to take a minute to remind everyone about the rules of this proceeding. This proceeding is at all times governed by the rules of procedure adopted by the board on September 26, 2011, last amended on March 9th, 2020. A copy of the rules of procedure is available for review in the back of the room and online. All those planning to testify today, which does not include those solely making arguments such as attorneys, should please stand now and take an oath administered by the board's attorney.
So if everyone could raise their right hand, who's going to testify and answer out loud, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes. Thank you. This is a quasi-judicial hearing. As such, the board reserves the right to deliberate in private. The Ohio rules of evidence do not apply to this hearing. However, professional rules of conduct do apply, and candor to the tribunal is required. The board members are citizen volunteers and are not paid for their service. They are treated as public officials under Ohio law. Any attempt to influence them, including but not limited to bribery, intimidation, retaliation, which may include contacting their employer in an attempt to exert influence, is punishable as a crime. All should be aware that this meeting is being recorded. Therefore, before you begin your comments, please state your name and address for the record. With that said, let's proceed with the first item. Mr. Owen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 1 is an application for a certificate of appropriateness at 3450 Observatory Place in the Hyde Park Observatory Historic District. It's an existing single-family home and a contributing building to the district. There's a renovation occurring on the building where they are proposing to expand the existing master bathroom on the 2nd floor to make that a more functional space. Currently, the 2nd floor of the building has this is just a 1-story portion of the building here with a flat rooftop that is with the rest of that wall inset in that area. So they're essentially expanding the master bathroom into this space on the corner of the building. In order to do that, as there is no roof or walls there now, they are proposing a dormer addition on the south elevation to provide that walls and the ceiling height necessary for that master bathroom. It will be visible from the front of the building, but it, in staff's opinion, is not highly visible. It is not something that will ultimately influence the existing architecture of the building. It will preserve the existing character defining features, mainly the curved roof line on that front facade. And you can see from the side, it is set back slightly from that corner. So this will be not flush with the front of the roof line, but this sweeping roof line will project out in front of it. So staff feels that this is an appropriate treatment to the building that will not negatively impact the architecture or its contributing status. So with that being said, staff does recommend the Historic Conservation Board take the following actions based on plans by Bauer and Myers Architects LTD dated 7/22/24. Approve the application for a certificate of appropriateness for 3450 Observatory Place with the condition that the building permits must be issued within 2 years of the decision date where the COA will expire.
Thank you. It looks like we do have 2 folks signed up for this. I'm not sure if they're both applicants or owners. I'm guessing Darren Myers might be one of the applicants. James Kennedy, are you an applicant or an owner?
Builder, so.
Okay, we're with the applicant team though. If anyone would like to come up and add anything, this is the time.
I'm Darren Myers with Bowerman Myers Architects, 8050 Hosbrook Road.
Is there anything that Mr. Owen has not told us that you would like to tell us today?
Just point out a couple more details. If you look at the front of the house, minus the dormer that is clouded there, the existing house, the curved roof is all being maintained. We're not doing anything to the front of the elevation. If you flip to the other page that shows the existing condition, it's kind of unsightly there right now. You can't hardly see it, but that little window, that's actually a membrane roof that's trapped between 2 walls. It catches leaves. It has some leak problems. And by putting the dormer on over top of that space, we're actually capturing a space that otherwise is not the greatest right now. And one thing we tried to be sensitive to, if you look at this existing drawing on the left, you'll see that there is a one-story part to the house that has a dormer condition, that a roof condition that we're using to replicate on the dormer we're doing. So we're trying to balance it out on both sides. Overall, they're mainly wanting to capture a little space and put a master bath in, and then update their laundry. And this was the most appropriate way that we saw to do it.
Are there any questions by the board for the applicant or staff? Doesn't seem like we have anyone from the public signed up, so if there are no questions, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness as laid out by staff.
Second.
I'll call the roll. Mr. Zalesko? Mr. Sunderman?
Aye.
Ms. Smith Dobbins?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
The chair votes aye.
Thank you all very much.
Item 2.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 2 is an application for a certificate of appropriateness and zoning relief at 12 Green Street. This is an existing contributing building in the Ryan Historic District. This actually was before the board previously in a similar configuration. However, that was granted over 2 years ago, and that COA did expire along with the zoning relief. So they're coming back with the current plan now. So it does differ very slightly from the previously approved plans. You can see on the image in the staff report a comparison between the two plans. With the plan on the left being what was previously approved and the plan on the right, the current proposal. So the roof deck or the decks on the rear of the building have been shortened from their previously approved plans. The current proposal actually matches the configuration of the historic wood decks that were previously located on the rear of the building. Those decks are no longer there. They were removed after significant deterioration. But the configuration that is proposed here is substantially the same as what was historically there. The roof deck on the rear slope and the back will remain as in the previous proposal. The existing walls on that exterior side of the building will remain in place. So that roof deck will not be highly visible from the street. And the other main change on this side elevation is the addition of the bars on the windows. That is also proposed for the front elevation. And also on the front, the existing window openings, which are currently infilled and blocked over with plywood. These openings will be reopened. It's not exactly clear what the original configuration of the storefront was. It may have had larger storefront windows, what you would typically see on a historic storefront over the Rhine, but that was infilled at some point over the years. And then those new window openings were then later infilled as well. So they will be reopened to the point of what the evidence shows from the prior to the previous infill. So they are expanding the size of those windows back to a previous configuration. And again, you do see the bars on the windows on the first floor. There's also lighting proposed on the building adjacent to the door on both sides, as well as some black facade lights. And then additionally, some lights in the corners that will be set into that line. So essentially, aside from the alteration to that deck on the rear, the colors on the windows, and some additional lighting, the plan remains substantially the same as what was approved in the past. Staff doesn't have any issues with the proposals as they are shown. Staff did have some concerns with the bars on the windows, especially because the historic conservation guidelines for this district specifically say that bars should not be placed on the exterior of the window openings. However, I did speak with Captain Matthew Hammer from Cincinnati Police Department, who noted that this is a significant hotspot for violent crime in the area, and he did suggest that some type of strengthening of these ground floor windows occur. So with that being said, staff feels that the bars on the windows are a reversible change. Staff would recommend that if possible, the bars be installed through the mortar joints and not directly into the brick so that it is easier to remove in the future. But considering the extenuating circumstances in the area, staff generally feels that these bars as a reversible change would be appropriate in this circumstance. The zoning relief on this project is related to the rear yard setback. Again, I mentioned in a previous hearing that the zoning code was recently updated, where in historic districts, the base zoning code setbacks no longer apply in historic districts. However, because this application was based off a permit that was submitted prior to the change to the zoning code going into effect, technically that zoning relief is still required on this project because it was in effect when this was submitted. So the rear yard setback is required. Additionally, there is a proposal for a live-work unit on the first floor with residential units above. Live-work units in the zoning code is referred to as a loft dwelling unit, and it does require conditional use to have that loft dwelling unit on the ground floor. So that it's conditional use approval is being requested. And then finally, the lights that are up in the cornice, the 4 lights are above the 20-foot height limit of the zoning code for exterior lighting. So at approximately 35 feet above grade, they would need a variance to have the lighting within the cornice. So staff doesn't feel that any of these zoning variances that are requested would be adverse to the historic conditions of this building or the greater district as a whole. So we do find them to be necessary and appropriate in the interest of historic preservation. And with all that said, staff recommends the board take the following actions based on plans by Spar Development PLLC dated 7/15/2024. Approve the conditional use for the ground floor loft dwelling unit. Approve dimensional variance of 7.5 feet for the proposed 5-foot rear yard setback. And approve a dimensional variance of 15 feet for exterior lighting at approximately 35 feet from grade. Staff also recommends approval of the certificate of appropriateness at 12 Green Street with the conditions that the existing projecting sign shall not be internally illuminated. I neglected to mention this. There is an existing projecting sign on the building currently. It is kind of hard to see on this angle, but it is at the corner of the building. It is a large cabinet type sign that would no longer be permitted under the current zoning and historic conservation requirements. However, as it is still there, staff does not have any issues with refacing the existing cabinet, but as it is no longer electrified, if it ever was, it has lost that non-conforming status for the electrification. So staff would recommend that if that sign is retained and reused, it not be electrified, so it would not be internally illuminated. So back to the recommendations. That is condition 1, the existing projecting sign should not be internally illuminated. Condition 2 is the building permit must be issued within 2 years or the COA shall expire.
Thank you, Mr. Owen. We do have Mr. Spar signed up. Is there anything you'd like to add for us today?
No, I'm just basically here to answer any questions since there's multiple points to that.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board for either the applicant or staff?
I have a question, Mr. Owen. You said you spoke to the somebody in the police department, chief or somebody. there's a lot of buildings down there that don't have bars on them. Is it the tenants that are making this particular place so dangerous, or?
I did not get into that much detail. I mean, I know there are a lot of buildings that do have bars in that area also, which is not something that's, highly common in some of the other parts of Over the Rhine.
Right.
But essentially, after speaking with with Captain Hammer with District 1, he essentially said that this area at this corner is essentially the epicenter of this violent crime issue in this part of Over the Rhine. And this building in particular has been broken into several times in the past. Most recently, it was broken into so that they could steal electricity from the building.
Well, and normally the break-ins are either because they know somebody or the building's vacant. I mean, that's my,
Is this building vacant now?
Yes. Yeah. It has been vacant for probably 3 years now.
I'm just curious if it
Crime
had
spot.
vacancy.
Well, and there's a public building adjacent to it on the side alley that has no interaction with the street, and a lot of people sit in the shade of that building directly across the street from this. And there's the bar up at the other corner of the front street there on 12th Street. So there's a lot of people hanging out.
How long have you owned it, sir?
I haven't, I'm the architect.
Oh, you're the architect.
I'm the architect, yes. So we came in, I think it was 21, and there had COVID, and then prices went crazy, and they weren't able to do it at that point. So we're resubmitting. Permit's been reviewed once, revisions requested, so.
I'm not crazy about the bars, but I'll approve it.
Mr. Owen, I have a question. Is there a chance to potentially revisit the bars in the future if conditions on Republic and Green change?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a specific condition that the bars have to be removed at a certain point in time, because there's no guarantee as to when that's, crime will get under control in that area. So we didn't want to put a specific timeline on it. So I think, our stance is that, while not ideal and not directly, or, not complying with the guidelines in that aspect, it is a reversible change. And that is why we are recommending that it be installed through the mortar joint, so the brick won't be harmed when they're taken down in the future. But ultimately, that would be our expectations, that when conditions do improve, the bars would go away.
Did it fall into receivership before? Is that why it wasn't completed before? Is that?
No, that's not why the last round of renovation wasn't completed, but I know that the city is pressuring these people to do the renovation and get it occupied. So it's not fallen into receivership from the owners that I was working with back in 21.
Yeah, and there are existing orders and I believe ongoing litigation related to this building as well.
That's what it sounded like. Thank you.
Any additional questions?
I just have a comment about the bars, in the sense that it sends bars on windows on the first floor tend to send a pretty bad message.
Very bad message.
So I'm inclined not to support that aspect of this application.
Do you have it rented out now, or you're just beginning?
Oh, no, it was demoed back for the first round of renovation that was planned in 21. So it is
That's
still
where it was
vacant
last.
right now. So there was temporary electric to put in there for them to work and have service and lighting there, but that's probably what they broke into.
I'm sorry.
Is there a change to that? Okay, we do have one member of the public signed up for this item. Mr. Hirschner, if you'd like to come up, you've got 2 minutes to address us. If you would like to add.
Hello, I'm Richard Hirschner. I live at 211 Woodward Street. And I can confirm relative to the recent conversation and as a recent board member of the Community Council of OTR that this is an extremely problematic and it is indeed the worst corner. The rec center is across the street where we would hold our meetings. There's constantly a lot of people around. It's like block parties right there. I was there yesterday and north of Green there, on Pleasant, it was like a block party with people out there all around the corner. I talked to a very nice gentleman about the style, the architecture and the various elements, and he was previously living in there when he was homeless. So in any case, my report, which I'm a architectural historian and preservation consultant, was regarding the surviving window to the right of the door on the south side. That is called a tripartite window. These were, the style was created, the specific style configuration by the famous architects Wyatt family in England at the second generation in the early 19th century, about 1809. And this becomes prevalent in the 1830s. You really only see it in the 1830s. In Cincinnati, we see it on the recently restored to the original windows on what's called the Harriet Beecher Stowe House, which was the original president's house at Lane Seminary. This is a highly significant feature. I don't know of any other windows in this configuration in OTR. And I'm not sure from the staff report if it's being restored to the same on the two left windows to the left of the door, but they certainly were exactly the same. The one comment I'd make on those windows and the building overall is, as you can see at the Stowe House, these were certainly 6/6 windows above and the central windows in the center, which were the only sash windows. Those are side lights on the side. Also, the frieze decoration up here, this is a Greek revival, is just kind of stuck on there. If you look at it, there's nothing on the sides. This is clearly an update, as are the caps on the second and third story windows to update it to a more Italianate style. But this is an important Greek revival building in OTR. Thank you.
That's all we have signed up. Are there any additional questions or comments?
Could you go back to the original elevations? Thank you.
John, are there any other alternative treatments to the first floor windows that would maybe a film to the side of the windows, shatterproof, that could be explored?
I believe there are some other options for strengthening the window. You know, I'm not entirely sure of what all those are at this point, but you know, between shatterproof glass or wire glass or something along those lines, there could be some more aesthetic options that would be a possibility.
Were those explored with the applicant, or
Was that?
was that explored with the applicant at all on this?
No, I mean, our conversations primarily revolved around, you know, whether it was necessary to have this protection. We can get into specifics about what specifically that alternative could be.
Thank you.
If there are no additional questions, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve both the zoning relief and the certificate of appropriateness as laid out by staff.
Second.
Call the roll. Mr. Zalesko?
Aye.
Mr. Thunderman?
Aye.
Mrs. Robbins?
Aye, I'm not thrilled about the bars on the windows, but in the interest of safety. Aye.
Mr. Young?
No.
Well, you guys are making this tough on me. I am also not in in favor of the bars, but with the justification laid out by staff, I'm going to vote aye, given this specific location. Okay, thank you, good luck.
Thank you.
Item number 3.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 3, an application for a certificate of appropriateness for 2147 Auburn Avenue. This is an existing church building in the Auburn Avenue Historic District. It is a contributing building, and there is an existing addition on the rear of the building that formerly housed I believe it was a school that was related to the church and its history. The addition was built sometime after the existing church. The church dates to 1884, and the addition was likely built in the early to mid 1930s. As the Auburn Avenue district does not have a specific period of significance listed in the guidelines, it wasn't 100% certain whether this addition is contributing or non-contributing. However, there are some buildings from the late 20s up to the early 1930s in the district that are considered contributing buildings. And between that and the architectural detailing that is on that addition, staff takes the position that that is a contributing addition to the existing building. Congregation that owns the church does not have a school associated with them, and they have no other need for a building addition of this size on the rear of the building. So considering the cost to stabilize and rehabilitate the building, the applicant's preference would be to demolish the addition and, leave the existing church intact and renovate that for their current use. So you can kind of see on this elevation, this addition is on the rear. It's somewhat below the existing grade at Auburn Avenue, so it is not something that is highly visible. The economic analysis by the applicant was reviewed by the Department of Community and Economic Development, who came to the same conclusion that that addition was not economically viable due to the cost to rehab and stabilize the building. And considering the fact that this is a nonprofit organization that owns the building, it would not have the ability to turn that into anything that would be an income generating property and maintain their nonprofit tax exempt status. So staff does feel that considering the minimal visibility of the addition and the economic impact of having to stabilize and rehabilitate that it is appropriate for the demolition of that rear addition. The applicant is also proposing to demolish the front vestibule addition that is built at the Auburn Avenue frontage. The vestibule is not a historic feature. It was added sometime after the original building was built and also after the later addition. You can see it is built directly on the front of the main entry doors, and it does block the views of those doors and alter the initial, the original appearance of that building from the street. So the applicant is proposing to demolish that so that the main church entry doors would be the main entry feature that is seen when approaching the church. So staff also feels that that is an appropriate alteration to the building. And then finally, the project does include site work on both the rear of the site as well as the front. On the front of the building, the existing landscape area covers the majority of this setback area. So there is not really much gathering space to speak of when you're entering or exiting the church. So the applicant is proposing to redo the landscaping area in the front of this building to provide more pavement and hardscape to allow that gathering area in the front. There will still be landscape beds along the front of the building and along the edges of this area, as well as tree plantings in that front landscape plaza area. The site work at the front will also include some low stone walls and black metal fencing that will surround that front plaza and gathering area. And staff feels that this is appropriate and in the spirit of the surrounding district, which many of the buildings feature the low black metal fences. So this fence and wall treatment is a contemporary but compatible way to approach that front facade treatment. On the rear of the building, where the former addition, or where the addition is currently located, the applicant does plan to utilize that space for additional outdoor gathering area. As I mentioned, the property is pretty much surrounded by Christ Hospital. It is generally pavement for access drives in and out of the hospital, specifically for the ambulances to come and go. So the church itself really has no outdoor area to speak of at this point. So once that addition is demolished, the applicant plans on creating outdoor space in this area. There would be a trellis on the back of the building with some tables and some playground equipment and playscape type treatments here on the back portion of where that addition currently is. And then finally, some landscaping along the rear property wall. So staff does feel that the proposed demolition and the alterations to this building are appropriate and do meet the historic conservation guidelines for the Auburn Avenue District. And staff does recommend the board approve a certificate of appropriateness for the demolition of the rear addition and front vestibule addition at 2147 Auburn Avenue, as well as site improvements at the front and the rear of the building.
Thank you. We do have 4 people signed up for this item. Are all of you applicants? If so, if any of you would like to come up and add anything, this would be the time.
Sure. My name is Kyle Campbell with Champlin Architecture. The architect on this, my address is 3230 Hildreth Avenue, Cincinnati 45211. The only thing to add is just, I know it was all covered in the report, but when we first sat down with the church, the initial thought was, do we keep the building or do we not? And that was the debate that was ongoing for a long time. And so we went into an extensive master planning exercise to make sure that it would not be a footprint that would be necessary for the building or something that would be helpful for them to try to rehabilitate. And that was the conclusion that we came to, is even if they max out the existing original church space, that back building would not serve any programmatic function for them. But what would serve as a programmatic function would be to create a green space, not just for the church community, but for the community at large. They recognize that they're in an urban setting. And so that is also what drove the front plaza. As you can see from the original photos of what's existing there, it's right now kind of a yard space or a garden space that isn't accessible because the fence cuts it all off. And so we're trying to set the church within an urban context and actually create an offset plaza from the street that would encourage people to actually interact with the space, and it becomes part of the public street and public access space. And so all those decisions kind of drove into why we are approaching this, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the board for the applicant or staff?
I have a question. You're taking out that building in the back, which seems like a good idea. By the way, taking out the vestibule is an excellent idea. And
The church has already asked us if they can go ahead and do that. I'm like, let us get it
Yeah.
first.
okay.
It is an eyesore to the front of the building, absolutely.
You know, kind of especially after the conversation we just had about the previous applicant. How easy is it going to be to access that back area? What I'm thinking about is kids going back there at night and doing what kids do and things like that. Are you creating a problem there?
Part of the solution ultimately will be to fence off access from the front so that it can be closed off. And the backyard is actually sunk significantly below the retaining
Yes.
wall that surrounds it.
I know.
And so one thing that we are in communication with Christ Hospital is at some point, do we have a conversation about actually building some sort of barrier on top of the curb wall that represents the retaining wall going around? Because you could, from the parking lot side, hop over that retaining wall and drop down onto the property. And so that could become a potential security issue, but it doesn't belong to the church. And so we would have to make sure that Christ Hospital would want to take that on and or create an opportunity where we actually fence in along our property line to make that inaccessible for people when it's not meant to be accessible to people.
I didn't think the look, does Christ have cameras back there now?
I don't know, because there's a parking garage for the nursing school, and then that's the ambulance drive that goes into the hospital. I'm not sure what the security situation is. It's nice that the contractor that is on board with the project for the church is also the main contractor doing all the work at Christ Hospital currently. And so they've offered to provide any sort of assistance with facilitating those communications. And so that's something that we could certainly approach the hospital to ask if there is security back there. I would think since it's Christ Hospital, they probably have some cameras pointing all over their property, but I do not know the answer for sure.
Thank you.
I think as long as you're thinking about it, I hope you understand that those kinds of things do happen. And that's something you don't want. And taking proper steps immediately before people start getting used to that. Right. Good idea.
Any additional questions or comments? So make sure none of the other applicants want to speak. If not, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I will move to approve the certificate of appropriateness for 2147 Auburn Avenue and including any notation that staff has provided in the report.
Second.
I will call the roll. Mr. Zalasko.
Aye.
Mr. Sunderman.
Aye.
Ms. McGovern.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Okay, we do have 2 National Register nomination recommendations as other business.
Yes, so you may remember several months ago, we had a similar National Register nomination because we're a certified local government. Anything under consideration by the state is forwarded to us if it's in Cincinnati to provide feedback to the board. So essentially, we are given the opportunity to submit a letter of recommendation for approval to any nominations. So at the next meeting later this month in Columbus, there are 2 nominations. One for 530 Walnut Street, which the full application was included in the packet. So I won't go over this in detail, but essentially this is an early skyscraper in the downtown area that housed a bank as Cincinnati was transitioning from the financial district being down closer to the river along 2nd and 3rd Street to where it is now up on 4th Street. So that is the first nomination for 530 Walnut Street under criterion A and C for both of those reasons. And then the other application is for 3168 Victoria Avenue, which is an existing single-family house, which is where a prominent local author, Robert Shulkers, lived while he was doing the most significant portion of his work. So staff does recommend that both of these buildings would be eligible for the National Register and does recommend approving a letter of recommendation to the State Historic Preservation Office.
We do them both at the same time or?
David, do you need?
I think individually is probably cleaner for the record.
Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Is the house on Victoria, are there people living in it?
Yes, and yeah, they do. The submit, not the author, but the person who submitted the National Register nomination is the owner of the house.
If there are no questions, let's go for the 530 Walnut Street application first. Is there a motion regarding that nomination?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to support the letter.
I think we're approving a letter of support.
Okay, approving the letter of support for 530 Walnut Street.
Second.
I'll call the roll. Mr. Zalesko?
Aye.
Mr. Sunderman?
Aye.
Ms. McDobbin?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. I will now entertain a motion on 3168 Victoria Avenue.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the letter of recommendation for 3168 Victoria Avenue.
Second.
Mr. Zalesko?
Aye.
Mr. Sunderman?
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Okay,
Remember that?
is there any other business today?
All this stuff he wrote.
Oh, yeah.
Nope. No other business? That being the case, I would entertain a motion regarding adjournment.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
I just barely can't remember the name.